Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into the world of macroeconomics. We're going to get to the bottom of what it actually is, why we even have it as a field of study, and who the main players are on this massive economic stage. All right, so here's our game plan for today. We'll kick things off by looking at the two main ways to see an economy. Then we'll dive into a really clever trick economists use to handle all that complexity. After that, we get into its pretty dramatic origin story to find the economic game board, and finally, meet the key players. So first things first, how is macroeconomics different from the microeconomics you might have heard about? Well, it really is all about your point of view. Are you looking at a single tree, or are you stepping back to see the entire forest? And here's the difference, right there. Microeconomics, that's all about the small stuff, the individual choices. You know, your decision to buy a cup of coffee, or a single company deciding how to price its products. Macroeconomics, on the other hand, zooms way, way out. It stops looking at the price of one thing and starts asking about the general level of all prices, what we call inflation. It's not about whether one person has a job, it's about the entire country's unemployment rate. You know, for a long, long time, the main idea, which came from guys like Adam Smith, was that if everyone just looked out for themselves, the whole system would kind of magically take care of itself. This famous invisible hand of the market would guide everything perfectly, and we wouldn't really need to worry about the big picture at all. But then, reality came knocking. This laser focus on the individual just couldn't explain these huge, persistent problems. I mean, why would millions of people be out of work for years if the market was just supposed to fix itself? It became super clear that there were bigger forces at play, things you could only see from that macro forest level perspective. Okay, so this brings us to a really big question. How on earth do you analyze the millions and millions of different goods and services in an entire economy? It just seems impossible, right? How do you track every car, every computer, every haircut, every cup of coffee, all at once? And yeah, that's the central challenge. The sheer complexity of a modern economy is, well, it's mind-boggling. But macroeconomics has this really clever trick up its sleeve to make it all manageable. And that trick is an idea called the representative good. Now, this isn't a real thing you can go out and buy. It's more of a thought experiment, a theoretical tool. It's one imaginary, single good that's meant to stand in for everything else. So when you hear economists talk about the price level going up, they're really talking about the price of this one imaginary good. Or when they say national output is growing, they mean we're producing more of this one imaginary good. It's a huge simplification for sure, but it's an incredibly powerful way to see which direction the whole economy is headed. Now, this whole new way of thinking didn't just pop up in a university classroom. It was actually forged in the fire of a truly devastating global economic crisis. See, before the 1930s, the dominant belief, what's called the classical tradition, was that the economy was this fundamentally stable, self-correcting machine. Yeah, there might be some bumps in the road, but it would always return to full employment on its own. The market would just handle it. And then the Great Depression hit in 1929. And this was not a bump in the road. This was a catastrophic collapse that absolutely shattered that classical belief. The economy wasn't self-correcting. It was spiraling downward. And nobody seemed to have a good explanation for why. And this just perfectly illustrates the human cost and the scale of the problem. In just 4 years, unemployment in the US shot up from around 3% to 25%. Just think about that. 1 out of every 4 people who wanted a job could not find one. Factories were sitting empty while people were suffering. It was a total system failure. So this is the crucial turning point. The crisis forced a complete revolution in economic thinking. An economist named John Maynard Keynes came along, and in his huge 1936 book, argued that we absolutely had to start looking at the economy as a single, whole system. He gave us the tools to analyze these big economy-wide problems, and in doing so, he basically invented the modern field of macroeconomics. Okay, so to use these new macroeconomic tools, we have to understand the playing field. The principles we're talking about here are really designed for one specific type of economy. And that system is a capitalist economy. It really just boils down to these 3 core features. First, private ownership. The stuff you need to make things. Factories, machines, land. It's owned by private people or companies, not the government. Second, production is for the market. You're not just making stuff for yourself, you're making it to sell for profit. And third, wage labor. People's work itself is something that's bought and sold in a market for a wage. So we have our big picture perspective, and we've defined the game board. Now, let's meet the main players who are actually moving the pieces around. Macroeconomics makes things a lot simpler by boiling down the millions and millions of people and businesses into just 4 key groups or sectors. And really understanding how these 4 interact, that's the key to understanding the whole economy. So, player number 1 is households. And hey, that's us, that's everybody. We are the consumers buying things, we're the savers putting money away, and, crucially, we are the people who provide all the labor that makes the economy go. Next up, we have firms. You can think of these as the production engines of the economy. They're the ones who hire us, the labor from the household sector, and they use machines and capital to create all the goods and services that we end up buying. All, of course, with the goal of making a profit. Our third major player is the government. The government kind of acts like a referee and a player at the same time. It sets the rules of the game by passing laws, but it also collects taxes from households and firms and then spends that money on public stuff like roads, schools, and healthcare. And finally, because, no modern economy is an island, our fourth player is the external sector. This basically covers all of our economic interactions with the rest of the world. Everything from exports, when we sell our stuff to other countries, to imports, when we buy their stuff. So let's wrap this up. What have we learned? Macroeconomics gives us that essential bird's-eye view of the economy. It uses clever simplifications like that representative good to make sense of incredible complexity. It was a field literally born from a crisis, and it gives us a framework based on the interactions of 4 key players: households, firms, the government, and the external sector. But really, this framework is just the beginning. It sets the stage for all the really interesting questions, right? How do these sectors actually interact with each other? What really determines the health of the entire economy? And how do all their decisions add up to create the economic reality that affects every single one of us every single day?